Hey everybody, thanks for sticking around to the Login VSI Vision 2022 event. This session is near and dear to me because I work with the team a lot and we have a lot of fun doing this, and it's all about community. So Ruben, take it away.
Yay, thanks. Yeah, awesome. Thanks all for joining. Welcome to the session When Work Isn't a Place. So you learn from 1,640 plus people and how they implement and how they look at modern workspace. Thanks for joining again. So when work isn't a place, well, good topic, right? End user computing. We're passionate about end user computing. And in this session, you will learn how others implemented end user computing and specifically desktop as a service. So yeah, let's see what we can share with you, right? And the core message is all about VDI Like a Pro, DaaS Like a Pro. And VDI Like a Pro started, let's say, 8 years ago. Yeah. Something like that, right? Community-driven, asking questions to a larger audience and provide the results to you so that you can learn from others. That's how VDI Like a Pro started. And over the years, we collected a lot of information and we actually built a pretty large white paper, which is free to download with awesome insights. And I remember last, I would say 2 years, we added desktop as a service specifically, besides virtual desktop infrastructure, because more and more customers, more and more people in the community were focusing and are focusing on desktop as a service. So we thought, hey, why not add more questions to the survey? And then we came to the conclusion, well, the survey already is humongous. Adding questions is maybe a little bit too much. Why not sort of fork the survey into two elements? One of them is focused on like on-prem VDI Like a Pro, and the other one is focused on cloud and hybrid desktop as a service, DaaS Like a Pro. That's sort of the history of VDI Like a Pro and DaaS Like a Pro. So today, the survey is still running. We have like a brand new survey with a lot of new questions. Focus on DaaS Like a Pro, desktop as a service, as I mentioned earlier. But also, it's great to sort of highlight the community and the community members who are driving this survey. Dennis, he is like not brand new, but for this in this community, in this DaaS Like a Pro community, as a new member. The results you will see, and you will learn from these results. But today we created like the content, and the content we created is based on like more than 300 people who are supporting the survey. But at the event itself today, we did took a look at like how many people actually already filled in the survey, and that's more than 400. So 400 people are supporting the survey, and the survey is still open. So if you didn't contribute yet to the survey, please go to daaslikeapro.com and fill in the survey. If you did fill in the survey, thanks, big thanks. Please share if you see something on social media, like please share the message so that other people are also informed to support the survey. And at the end, like more data points, more people who are supporting the survey is good for everyone. It makes the data even more reliable, and it's good for community building as well. So okay, let's dive deeper into the actual results. So before we dive deeper into the DaaS Like a Pro results, I would say this is also a fundamental question in our sort of segment in end user computing. So end user computing is a huge umbrella term with a lot of technology inside that umbrella term. But one of the elements is about DaaS and VDI, virtual apps and virtual desktops. And in that context, the question is, well, what is the percentage of Windows applications in your environment? And that's a question we asked in VDI Like a Pro past 7 years. And it's great to see in trend. And the trend is simply maybe 10 years ago, it was like 95% of your application landscape was based on Windows. And that is slowly sort of declining. And this is the question from last year in VDI Like a Pro, more than 600 people supporting that survey. And you can see close to 70%, 70% of the application landscape is Windows based. And that's why we are sort of here, because it is reality that Windows apps in the modern workspace of today and tomorrow and in 10 years from now, Windows apps have a fundamental role besides mobile apps, besides web and SaaS applications.
And they bring us so much fun and joy installing and troubleshooting them, right? So
yeah. Another question: when you think of DaaS, what comes to mind first? So cheap. No one answered that one. Like when you think of DaaS, what comes to mind first? Cheap? Nope. Flexible? Yes, big time. But also disrupting traditional VDI, public cloud, device as a service, working from home. Yeah, so many different answers here, but I would say flexible is the majority. Is that's what comes to mind first, and I think I can relate to the response as well. Of course, it depends on use cases, but like flexibility is one of the sort of superpowers of DaaS. And of course, flexibility can mean different things, but easy rollout, leverage multiple regions, scale in, scale out. Yeah, and like cost, like no OPEX, but like
CapEx.
OPEX, not CapEx. Yeah, exactly. That's part of it as well. So then you can decide and discuss how, like, what that price will be, and if it fits the sort of budget and the ideas. But that's a different conversation. We will talk about that soon as well. What is DaaS in your opinion? We had, when we prepped the survey, probably I would say 5-6 months ago, 4 months ago, something like that. This was like a pretty debated, heated debate, like with the four of us, like, hey, what is DaaS? And the conclusion was, well, if we cannot figure it out with the four of us, what is the industry doing? And think about that acronym. So, yeah, what is DaaS? Well, interesting, right? But it's good to see that, I would say, the majority, there are sort of two groups. One of them is like, it's some sort of control plane, hosted as a service, in cloud, vendor managed. Is not stated like that, but that's like the sort of the mindset behind it, with virtual apps and desktops located anywhere, managed by myself, by my IT department, or maybe an MSP. And the other big one is more sort of like a pay-as-you-go business model. You could also say maybe one of them, like pay-as-you-go business model, is sort of like an Happy Meal, one box, which includes quote everything. You can debate if it's happy meal
or just
or
a meal.
My kids, although my kids are a little bit older, but they still enjoy that type of meal. And myself not so much, but that's just about that particular meal. But similar things could apply to DaaS. Some companies or some use cases don't fit that model and require a much more sort of flexible model. And both have their pros and cons. But it's good to see that, there are sort of two groups. Control plane as a service with a lot of flexibility, depending on the DaaS vendor, of course, as well, but a lot of flexibility to pick and choose to match that with your use case. And the other one is more like a sort of Happy Meal, all-in infrastructure, some sort of management, like maybe fixed price.
It also makes you wonder what is as a service, because I still need to do a lot myself if I want to go do DaaS, right? It's not really like a service. I kind of need to build the kitchen and the hamburger, referring to.
What is it that you actually
but
get?
Then I'll get a burger. Great. So for me, I think the term is up to debate. There's lengthy white papers that we can't quote here because they're from expensive research companies. They figured it out quite well, but it's all over the place. So we'll see the term being narrowed down over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
and it will be something.
And on one side, you might say, hey, it's just a discussion about term, but I can share some experience from the field. Is that if you're not sure, and if you don't spend time to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what you think about DaaS, and someone else has a different view on it, then you can communicate and just like mismatch on different sides. And I
had discussions with customers where they're asking, I'm buying into this desktop as a service. Why are you still patching the operating system yourself? It's a service, right? So the expectation that you get when you talk to the business owners who are actually paying for the desktop as a service solution versus the people who are actually installing and deploying, for most people who actually do the work and get it deployed and get it managed, and it's a very logical, this result is very logical. But for somebody who's paying the bill, what am I paying for? Why am I still doing application deployment of myself? And why do I still need to define my golden images myself? A business person will probably not ask that particular question, but the sentiment is there, and I think there's a lot of confusion out there.
So, do you consider DaaS a strategic IT solution for your business or point solution? Well, given the price, I might hope that it is a strategic solution. But also, if we look at 2 slides ago, flexibility, I would argue that we're using DaaS only temporary for a limited amount of time. I would have expected it to be a little bit higher. It is what it is, right? So for a lot of people, it is strategic. They're going to use it for the majority. That makes sense to me, right? Could also be on the other end, we see a lot of customers that just offer one application. It's a workaround to still offer that legacy, quote unquote, application into their platform. So this makes sense. I expected a little bit more here, given flexibility, but if you think, if you agree, please fill the survey. So, what are the most important drivers for the adoption of desktop as a service? And I think if you take one in mind right now, you will probably most likely have one of these that is outlined here, right? So first of all, cloud first strategy. I'm not exactly sure what that means, because going to the cloud is something we want to do as an organization. Is that your business? Is that how you make money? Not sure. Could be. But I do understand, obviously, you say, hey, we want to get rid of this on-prem stuff. And we want to move that to somebody else's responsibility. Let them take care of it and make it. Oh, wait a minute. Not the as a service we were talking about, right? So again, a lot of stuff happening here. We can also see the brownish color, obviously the winner, to support hybrid and remote work, right? This makes sense. This is still very much the reality today. Many of these environments, even if they are on-prem, are running at maximum capacity. You can't afford to make a mistake, because a lot of people are still working from home and want to continue doing so. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Also, a couple of notes, if I can add. Like, I rather go from cloud first to cloud smart, and leverage the platform on-prem or cloud where it makes sense. I know multiple sort of community friends, but also multiple customers who sort of quoted something like, I had a 3-year budget and I moved to cloud, and I'm 1 year in and budget is already gone. Now what? Well, maybe that was cloud first and cloud smart. Could be, right? So that's one angle. Also, like the disaster recovery, so the DR angle of the sort of adoption is what I see as well. Could be really DR, like second side or like second location for DR, but also from a ransomware perspective, some shit happens. I've seen it myself in the field, where it's something happened inside, ransomware hit, and then just like spin up in public cloud and like full up and running environment in a matter of like days, and be back up and running, while sort of physical devices with like a typical endpoint like management was still sort of struggling to handle it. And that was also like, that's also an angle where I see value in DaaS adoption. And the other one, like, is run apps close to the data, especially when there's a huge amount of data in public cloud. Why not run these apps close to where the data is? We all know with our history that the best application/user experience is when the app and data are close to each other. So if that data is in cloud, yeah, maybe the better user and application experiences when you run these apps.
That's honestly also how I see that DaaS really fits into a company-wide cloud-first strategy. If you're moving your business applications and their data, like SAP, for instance, in Azure, then you want your legacy SAP GUI client, for those workflows that still exist, or any other application that uses the data in that database. You want that as closely as possible to. So it's a nice migration path, or it helps the migration to the cloud in that sense.
Ultimately, it's just physics, right? You need to the smaller the distance, the better it is. And a lot of applications go back and forth a lot of times with their data before they show it to the user. And if all of those items have latency, then you're in trouble.
So what are the biggest challenges in adopting DaaS? And I connect it to like challenges in the context of cloud. Cost is, I would say, biggest challenge. Performance. especially when you don't know the details of like instance types, networking, storage, GPUs. Yeah, then performance for sure can be a huge challenge as well. Trust is third. Resistant to change. I find it an interesting one. Resistant to change, is that like you, me, like colleagues who filled in the survey? Yes. So interesting these days. Resistance to change, and yeah, sometimes, not sometimes. It's good to step out of the comfort zone and investigate new technologies and help customers with that. So resistance to change, in my opinion, in this fast-moving space of end-user computing, should be very low.
That means you're in trouble. Cost is also interesting, right? Because it's such a wide range of choices. For example, instance types to choose from, right? We've seen a lot of them that have nearly similar specs but behave completely different when it comes to performance. We've seen them with nearly identical costs and then having 200% difference or 300 even in capacity. So we'll have sessions later on that by Jim and Blair as well, by the way.
So just
good one. And also attached to cloud first, cloud smart, in my opinion, is also attached to cost. Because if you're cloud first and push because you need, and you're not smart about it, then the quote what I mentioned earlier, we used our 3-year budget in 1 year. Yeah, good luck with the cost, and then go back to the.
I'm curious to understand how many customers really know what their desktop is. What the desktop cost is of their current desktop. So before you go talking about it's going to be more expensive or cheaper, what are your current costs?
And as long as that device is still there, you're paying twice, right?
Yes, yeah, that too. Yeah.
Hey, another question: which DaaS solution are you using or will you introduce? AVD, big time here. Citrix, 2 different options, like a Happy Meal option and a more sort of flexible option. Second and third. Windows 365, like Cloud PC, Nutanix Frame. These are like I would say the big ones here. What I find interesting is that Microsoft AppStream and Workspaces are small, while AWS itself is huge. For some reason, the actual deployment of AppStream/Workspaces are lower, and or maybe the end-user computing community around AWS is much smaller or less active. I'm not sure why, but I was surprised to see that number relative low, to be honest. So yeah. Alrighty, that's just.
What are the most important factors in selecting a DaaS solution? So what are we looking at basically when we're choosing a DaaS solution? And then, not surprisingly, it's again cost. If you look at the highest bar here, it's performance. Then you have manageability. But if you look at the first 2 bars here, you see, or the second and third bar here, those are both about cost. So I don't really understand. I don't really know if with CapEx we mean, our current CapEx is driving us to the cloud, or switching from CapEx. My feeling is that we can just add those 2 up, and that cost was the biggest, let's say, challenge for moving to DaaS. But at the same time, it's also one of the most important. It is the most important factor in moving there. I think the infrastructure support is interesting. And that kind of speaks to the flexibility that we saw earlier, where you could just choose where you want to host your VMs and where you want to run your workloads. Manageability and performance obviously are key here as well.
And it makes sense to add costs together, but if I don't, I'm quite happy to see that performance is a important factor.
Of course, Mark. Yeah, so you're right.
There's lies in statistics, right?
Yeah.
Performance means like also user experience. Like we know that cost on one side and UX on the other side.
They don't like each other.
UC story.
Yeah. So next question, I'm going to shorten it a bit. How do we manage our VMs? Basically, that's what we're asking here. And there are some usual suspects, of course, that are sticking out. It's Microsoft SCCM that is important. Microsoft Endpoint or Intune, basically. And it's interesting to see that we're moving maybe towards a somewhat more modern way of managing those devices. what I find a little bit scary is the amount of manual updates that we still see. I would have expected now, especially with the uptick in DaaS and in desktop virtualization in general, that we would have industrialized it a bit more, right? That we would automate things, that we don't repeatedly open up these things manually, doing the patching, doing the application installations. But there's still quite a large group of people that really do their master images, that maintain their master images manually. On the other hand,
especially in a cloud strategy, I honestly believe that's not going to allow you to keep up anymore. You're just going to always be behind.
It's basically you're upgrading your infrastructure, but you're not upgrading your processes. So it's like, buying a new oven and then still doing all the other work by hand if you're baking bread. So it's a poor analogy, but still. Yeah.
And also it doesn't help. It doesn't help in the satisfaction that end users or admins get from using the environment. So this is one of the things we track from the VDI Like approach survey, all the way from this sucks to we're drinking champagne together with our users. Doing things manually is definitely a big reason to see lower quality, but also a good reason to test, your applications before you go live. So for this event, it's fitting.
Of course,
you can do it manually, but please do test.
Automate and test. Yeah. Yes. So how often do we patch those systems? And that's actually quite often. So we see at least once a month. The majority is updating their systems once a month. So I don't know how many images people have and how many hours are spent on updating those images, but there's also a certain risk involved there as well. Especially if you do, if you have to patch your system for zero-day vulnerabilities, it's a risk that you're taking each time you update your patches. I would have liked to see a little bit more patching. I think the once per month. If I look back at the VDI Like a Pro surveys from the past, then I think it's always been around that. It has always been the once per month that was used the most. Again, with the modern.
Yeah, but also the multiple times a month, that is also increasing.
Yeah,
if you look at
that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
But I think that's also, if you start to automate things, then you can really speed that up and be much quicker in your delivery.
Ultimately, if you can nail multiple times per week or per day, then you're not going to be in trouble anymore, because you've automated so much of the process by then that it doesn't really matter anymore how many you want to do. It will then be how many are there actually to do, right?
Yeah.
Big guys like Amazon, Facebook, for their websites, they can do one update in production every 7 seconds on average. So if we land somewhere between 7 seconds and 30 days,
I'm good. Yeah.
Cool. So I have no idea whose slide this was, but I do see an M. Oh, that's me. Great. Yeah. So what's the most typical instance size for a single user VM? This makes sense, right? 2 vCPUs, 8 gigabytes of RAM. The rest obviously is as you expected. These numbers.
Also, like 4 CPUs is also a good one, because like I that's what I see most in the field, like especially in single user, more and more 4 CPUs, like Win 10, Win 11. Running on 2 CPUs.
Keep in mind, it does get expensive quite quick. So you could then opt to also maybe go to, there's a slide missing here, to a multi-user VM, where obviously the sizes are bigger. And I think the 32 gig memory was actually the standard there. Number of vCPUs, 8 by heart.
4 and 8, yeah.
So
2 1. Yep.
With that, also we're nearing the end of our talk already. So shall we throw in one more controversial one, maybe about application layering and the fun you can have with that when it comes to performance. Now, application layering and performance don't like each other. They really don't. So to cut it short, if you're doing application layering, great, all of these products can do what you want, but use it to solve a problem. Don't use it to see what you can, how much you can do with it. We've seen in the past with MV, like, oh, we want to, virtualize 80 or 90 or 95% of our apps. That's not the goal here. Use it to solve a problem, because every layer you make Citrix layering, when you actually bake that image together, exclude it, can do it differently, will have an impact on the performance. But that's something you can measure. You can find out in production, you can test it in pre-production. But keep in mind, this has a big impact, as well as actually endpoint security solutions. Now, endpoint security obviously being antivirus, and this is a big pain point, right? You need to be secure. You need to have antivirus on your systems. There's also a lot of anti-malware happening today, scanning all of your activities. There's a lot of new vendors. I believe, Ruben, you just had an interesting point here with a customer.
Yeah, like with the newer ones. So Sentinel and CrowdStrike, they just behave different than we call antivirus solution like 5 years ago. So just like behavioral analytics is what I see, and that if that's not trained well or not set up well or not recognized well, that can have called like interesting results. So yeah, really understand how your news like security solution, how that operates in DaaS in VDI context is good to double check or triple check with these vendors before you scale up like big time. That's like the simple summary of what I
Absolutely. So I want you guys in the audience. Oh, sorry, Dennis.
Yeah,
wrong D.
big question. So can we do this in 10 seconds? But yeah, it's what are we still missing in DaaS? What is it really that would really make it stick? I have my own ideas in regarding industrialization, so more automation in the background, making it easier to use. But Ruben, what are your thoughts here?
Oh, I would say two things. So it's not simple enough. On one side, there are like very complex solutions where consulting organizations do a great job by spending a lot of time in making it happen. So the solution itself needs to be built with like DevOps scripting, Ansible, like all this whole thing. That's all great. Don't get me wrong with that. But some customers are not into that direction and want to have just a UI and interface which is self-explanatory, which just works. Don't need a 6-day training course to get XYZ DaaS solution up and running. So much simpler from a user, from an admin, from a developer's perspective is, I would say, missing for some vendors, especially the ones who are not born in cloud, like native born in cloud. That's sort of for me attached to it. And on the other side, what is missing is flexibility when you look at Office and Windows licensing in a multi-hybrid cloud context. It's really a pity sometimes and shame when you're really sort of forced into one platform where you can run Office and Windows 10, Windows 11, single user, multi-user. And yeah, that sort of, I like choice, and I think it's good for the industry, good for customers, good for partners when you can make decisions based on your criteria and not on sort of licensing criteria. But that's my simple.
Absolutely.
There are much more to share, but based on time,
you can always check in with us, and we're happy to discuss. And you'll see us at many more events. But we need you to think about this and also fill this survey. It is a community survey. We can't do this without you. So if you scan this QR code or go to daaslikeapro.com today, right now, you can fill the survey, participate. We'll make sure to send the full report to you. There's no spam. There's no involvement here. We're all just sitting at night doing this because we're idiots that kind of like to know these things. We hope you enjoy this and talks like this. If you want to use the data, if you feel like an answerer or your company should be in here, just reach out to us. We're always happy to help. You can find us on all social media. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to us, but even more for participating in the survey. And I will see you in some of the other sessions we have at this great event. I would like to thank Ruben and Dennis for their time tonight. And Christian, you're not here, but also thanks for all of the effort you've put in here. And take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks all.
Yep, thanks. Enjoy the event. Bye all.